Last night, the Boston Celtics won the pivotal Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and today I want to break down game footage and stats that show why it's now official that the Celtics are headed to the NBA Finals. What's up guys, SCJ here, and if you enjoyed today's video, then make sure to give it a like as it helps out a lot, and if you're new to the channel and or enjoy the NBA, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. So last night, the Boston Celtics got a 13-point win in the almost always pivotal Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals as they beat the Miami Heat by a score of 93-80. There's one stat that shows the Celtics will be headed to the NBA Finals now, but for now, let's break down how the Celtics got this very important Game 5 victory. So just like how I broke down and showed in my previous video, the Celtics started the game by immediately going back to the drop defense that they've been using this whole series against the Heat, and the Heat, simply put, couldn't capitalize on the very good looks that they were getting out of it. Frustrated with how they weren't making their easy looks on offense, the Heat began to double team Tatum and Brown on the opposite side of the ball, and while it worked for a few possessions, I'm sure you can see by judging the final score that it didn't work out for the entire night. The drive from Boston felt like the equalizer in the half court of the offense. Miami did a good job of being active and working versus the off-ball actions of the Celtics, but here Tatum was able to reject and drive. The help comes and he draws a foul. One thing I also mentioned in my last video was how Derek White struggled offensively last series, so the Celtics had to find ways to make him effective here, and here they use him as a screener. Lowry had been switching and they don't give it, but here you have White able to slip into the paint and score here. This play kind of shows that the Heat, simply put, couldn't get comfortable and into tempo last night as they naturally couldn't get plays going, and it was up to Jimmy to lead the offense as he points right to Bam and tells him to get into the post versus Brown, and while it worked out, the lack of chemistry and tempo was simply alarming to me. Speaking of that, the Heat were taking bad shot attempts, and while they scored here on a beautiful slam by Bam on the follow, this possession was more sloppy and lucky to say the least. PJ Tucker at the 5 for Miami is major as they have a degree of switchability defensively, and here you have two on the ball as Tatum comes off, opens the roll for Horford, help rotates, but Boston's ball movement creates a three and simply put can just hurt Miami in their degree of switchability with how great they move the ball. Victor Oladipo knew with Tyler Hero out, he was going to have to step up even more than he has, and right here, he has a very high effort bucket to give Miami the lead. Miami was throwing switchable lineups out there over and over to try and hurt the Celtics, and the Heat did a good job of defending, so Boston knew they had to keep their ball movement up, and again, the equalizer for Boston seems to be the drive when things break down. Robert Williams' recovery on this play was excellent, and while I am a big fan of Marcus Smart, plays like this are examples of why I thought he should have been crowned Defensive Player of the Year this season. Here you have Horford versus Miami zone. The Celtics have gone with pick and roll to get him off his short roll. The zone matchups get distorted for a split second, and the key is going to have to be staying matched up. Speaking of Al Horford once again, this defense from him here is great and shows his importance in this series. The Heat try to have Martin screen for Bam. Horford is back and fights over. In a drop, sits on Bam's roll, and he's right there and displays active hands. Here is a great design play from the Celtics. Again, they get Derek White as a roller, but watch how they did it. Horford screens for Tatum, Jimmy and Bam switch. Now White comes to screen with Robinson on him. That's a show or recovery, but Bam is in the action and can't help whatsoever. I'm pretty sure this is going to somehow be only my first criticism for the Celtics here in this video, and we're a quarter and a half into this game. But one thing Boston needs to do going forward is to stop trying to go back to the same plays or actions too often, as Boston goes back to the same action, but this time PJ gets screened. Robinson shows and recovers like a man who does not want to go back to the doghouse, aka the end of the bench, and it turns defense into offense for Miami. Now, while this ends up as a miss, this is why Smart's on-ball reps are so important for Boston. White screens for him with Robinson still showing. That means two of Boston's non-shooters are in action, so the help comes and it's a kick to Tatum. His drive creates a kick to Brown and he takes a great shot attempt. Despite missing it, it was still a great look. PJ was back at the 5 late for Miami in the first half, and when they are smaller, you could see more of a mindset to try and drive out of them, and you could see them trying to find that tempo and mindset that they missed earlier in the game with the drives. And after seeing almost no minutes the whole playoffs, Robinson came up huge in this game, and of course on this play, which is a nice surprise for Eric Spoelstra in the absence of Tyler Hero, I guess. PJ's offensive rebound saved possessions for Miami last night, but the man who had the best three-point percentage in the league until March and finished with the 8th best percentage wasn't saving Miami with his shooting and only his rebounding. Boston keeps working the pressure points of Miami in this game, as you can see here, and you have Strus on Horford, who goes to screen for Tatum. Horford rolls into PJ, which forces the switch. It looks like PJ is trying to kick him out of the matchup, but Tatum holds 2 and hits Horford for 3. This Celtics team's offense has truly evolved whenever Tatum has showed off his great playmaking. Celtics again had Horford screen for Strus in action. There's no real switch or no real show. White's able to turn the corner and hit Horford on the roll. This play right here is an encapsulation of how Miami's fight had them winning this game early, as they simply put couldn't get too many good possessions put together. Bam has to probe versus Horford here off the dribble if the Heat want to win games 6 and 7. Also notice again the drop and the help from Boston as Jimmy comes off of Bam. Miami countered with an empty corner, but again the drop is not budging whatsoever. Horford is even with Bam, rolling with Smart's help off the strong side, and Miami has to put a dent in Boston's conviction defensively in the next 2 games if they even want a chance to win this series. Dribble penetration has been the key for the Celtics in this series. Tatum drives, the defense helps, and there's the kick. Williams then drives and hits a shot. Drive and kick being open is allowing Boston to play random and take advantage of Miami's help. Miami, simply put, can't let it get to a spot where these shots from Boston just flip it. The Heat go with the dive play here, and just look at Boston's defense. PJ's in the weak side corner, but it's not just the help off of him. The drop is almost always even with the roll, and Horford is helping with off the strong side. Boston flipped the matchups with Horford on Butler. Miami has to attack Al Horford, and they just have to do it if they want to even have a chance to win this series. Also notice Robert Williams. It's not just the block, it's the call for the switch that he stays on the strong side even without guarding PJ. Those pressure points for Boston became even more important the deeper this game goes. Brown hands off to Tatum into a screen with Williams. Robinson is showing. Williams rolls, help comes off, and now it's a kick to Brown. The Celtics used dribble penetration here to take advantage of Miami helping, and it simply killed the Heat. Then right here's the great defense by the Celtics into offense on the other end, and this is when the game really began to start getting out of hand. You remember how White had success as a roller versus the show? Well, the Heat give the switch here to try and take that away, which leaves Jaylen Brown versus Gabe Vincent, and Boston being able to mix in these shots is even bigger when they have a lead. Dribble penetration from the Celtics was the Heat's Achilles heel. Miami's going to be active and help. The drives are able to force help out and play out of it. Tatum drives and kicks to Horford, who drives, forces more help, and then hits Tatum. Boston's defense here is great. Gabe Vincent comes off of Butler. Horford stays in the drop. Williams is planted at the nail. There's no roll, and no one has to move, and there's still a drop. If the game wasn't already over, this is what really put it away. There's barely any time on the shot clock, and White goes to screen for Tatum. The Heat don't want to switch. It's 2 on the ball, and it's a kick to Brown for an insanely difficult 3 to push the lead to 23. Now this has to be the mindset from Bam Adebayo. The only problem is that it came too late. Last series there was questions about if Derek White could stay on the floor, and now Boston is using him to matchup hunt, which is absolutely crazy. Here he gets the switch versus Robinson, and he gets a bucket, and good night Miami. So this was clearly a beautiful win by the Boston Celtics as the Heat held the halftime lead, but the Celtics woke up at the half and turned a 5-point halftime deficit into a 23-point lead at that point in the fourth quarter, where Brown hit that shot clock expiring 3 I showed earlier. The Celtics truly are this season's Cinderella team, as like I mentioned in my previous video, they were the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference on January 7th of 2022, and they ended up as the 2nd seed and look bound for the NBA Finals now. While having a 3-2 lead is already a good enough reason for them to be going to the finals, the Game 5 winner of a 2-2 series has a 82% chance of advancing based on history, and while the Bucks had a 3-2 series lead after winning Game 5 last series, yet they still lost, the team that they lost to was this Boston Celtics team, of course. So I think that's a pretty good indicator that the Celtics will be headed back to the NBA Finals for the first time since they faced the Kobe and Pau Gasol-led Lakers back in 2010. I want to know, though, what you guys think about this Celtics team, any of their players, or anything we talked about in this video down below in the comment section. If you liked the video, then make sure to give it a like as it helps out a lot. And if you're new to the channel and or enjoy the NBA, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you stay up to date with all the newest content on my channel. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'm SCJ, and I am out. Peace.